stuckness is a natural human phenomenon, and you can empower yourself to be and do what you want to.
Welcome to the Core Happiness Podcast. I'm your host, Kacee Banks, a mindset and positive psychology coach. On this podcast, we discuss all things related to creating happiness from within. So, let's do it. Hello, and welcome back to the show. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Michelle Maidenberg. Dr. Maidenberg is a renowned therapist with a private practice in Harrison, New York, the co-founder and clinical director of Through My Eyes, which is a nonprofit offering free video legacies for chronically ill individuals. She is also the author of Free Your Child from Overeating and her latest book, Ace Your Life, Unleash Your Best Self and Live the Life You Want. In addition to her work as a TEDx speaker, a Psychology Today blogger, she also publishes guided meditations on her YouTube channel and teaches mindfulness practice at NYU. And is involved with several organizations, including the Boys and Girls Club of Westchester Trauma Network. Today, Dr. Michelle joins us to discuss her insights on how to help cope with negative emotions, cultivate self-acceptance, and just overall be our best selves so we can live the life we want. Dr. Michelle, so happy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I would love to start by telling us a little bit about what inspired you to pursue a career in mental health and just overall wellness.
Yeah, so that goes back a long way. I definitely come from a family of intergenerational trauma. So I think I was bred that way since I was born out of the womb. My 4 grandparents were Holocaust survivors. So I think that speaks for itself. Most of their families were murdered, unfortunately, and they were very, very fortunate to survive. Constantly hearing stories of traumatic, terrible atrocities. And you can imagine just growing up with parents who are so traumatized. So unfortunately, it carried over to my parents. They married really young, divorced really young. I was 3 when they divorced. And it was really a roller coaster. I went to 5 different elementary schools, and I could go on and on and on. However, what I found for myself is that I was constantly in a position of being pseudo-mature, of course, right? And then also, I just had this natural kind of tuition, independent, and I remember resilience, like ever since I was really, really young. So the profession, actually, I was drawn to it. There wasn't even a doubt in my mind that I wanted to do anything else in my life. And when I was in high school, I took an AP course, an advanced placement course in psychology, and I won an award at graduation. And literally, it was like I won an Academy Award. I was just so proud of myself and so excited. And I didn't really know anybody in the field at all. So I had to do research and investigate. And when I was in college, I put myself through my own therapy. I paid through my student loans. So it was, like I said, it was a natural intuition. And then also the other thing, which I also did which was amazing to me now that I think about it. So I always identified kind of older women who mentored me and who found my strength and my resilience and really fostered love and worthiness. I always had that in my life. I always cultivated that, which again, I feel such gratitude for. And I feel such gratitude to these women who really helped me so much form this, sense of identity and self-belief and self-love. But it has been a process. Let me tell you, I believe that as we mature and develop, we're always going through a journey. We're always evolving and changing. And will forever be that way till the day I die.
I completely agree with that. When I'm working with clients and coaching, I always try to remind them that trying to stay who you were is almost impossible, right? We have natural evolution, we have natural growth, and a lot of people, their default seems to be, oh, I don't like to change, I don't like transition. But that is a very natural part of our evolution towards growth. And as you said, we will always be evolving. We will always be changing. One thing I wanted to ask you, and you really just touched on this, especially with having the network that supports self-growth and self-love, self-compassion. You emphasize that importance a lot between self-acceptance and self-compassion. And can you explain how these practices help improve overall well-being?
Yeah. What I keep on, I guess, contemplating in my practice and with my patients and for myself personally, and it's interesting, I'm actually going to be doing a broadcast this evening. And the question that they're asking me is, are people capable of change?
Mm.
Which is so interesting, right? So that's really the question is, how do we evolve? How do we change, right? We may, cognitively and rationally want to change, but
Mhm.
there's the big difference between thinking about it and doing something about it. And what I find over time, and again, I could speak for myself, is it is quite simple
Mhm.
and seamless to initiate change because there are so many resources out there on how to do that. The real problem fundamentally is how to sustain it over time
Mhm.
because our brain is wired, our neural networks are wired to repeat. Why? Because of familiarity and because, again, our familiarity is ease.
Mhm.
Our brains don't want to work hard. And when that neural pathway is formed, it inevitably just repeats the behavior. So I do this lovely little experiential exercise with my students because I teach about cognition and neurophysiology and all that, because I think it's so important that we know about our brain and how it functions. So I give them a piece of paper and I have them fold it, like fold it and fold it and fold it as much as they can, and then unfold it. And then I have them fold it again. And I ask them, which way was it easier to fold? And of course, it's the second because it already has the creases. That is our brain. Our brain will repeat and repeat and repeat the same behavior. And that's why people say, I don't know why I keep finding the same guy. And I don't know why I keep finding myself in this position.
Yeah.
Well, it's not by happenstance. It's not haphazard. Your brain, again, even it's amazing, even with abuse and really severe kind of challenges, people say, oh gosh, I don't know why I keep ending up in these situations. And it's such distress and sometimes even safety, but it's repetitive. Or we judge and we say, I don't understand how that person, could keep on doing that. What's wrong with them? Don't they see that that's toxic for them? Don't they see whatever? Why do they keep falling into that same pit? This is why. It's not our fault. It literally is not our fault. And it's so important to understand that our brain is constantly going to self-sabotage us. And we have a lot to work against. So that takes a lot of intentional effort. It doesn't happen easily. And if we're not willing to put in the time, the effort, it's not going to happen. And that's just the way it is. And then there's this whole idea like we will do something if we're motivated to do it. No, motivation comes from doing because then you have the dopamine and the oxytocin and all the neurotransmitters, right, doing its work, which is going to compel you to want it more. And then you'll repeat the behavior. I happen to be a very disciplined person, which is atypical for most people. And people say to me, how do you do that? Oh my goodness, I don't understand. Like, how are you so like I've been exercising for over 30 years and I am absolutely routined and regimented. And 6 days a week I work out. And if I can't work out one day, I switch it up. Or if I can't do a certain type of workout, I'll do another workout, whatever that looks like. And they're like, how do you do that? And I said, I don't have a motivation vein any different than you do. Like, we're not wired differently. It's a matter of really committing to the process. So when I talk about kind of acceptance, compassion, and empowerment, like you just raised, it's really, again, people get confused on what that is. People feel like, oh my gosh, if I accept myself, that means I'm going to live a life of mediocrity.
Complacency. Yeah.
Yeah, and complacency. No, it's just acceptance. And maybe it's the wrong terminology, but it's noticing.
Mm.
Just in the noticing, it's truly accepting yourself without expectation, without conditions or qualifications. And we're constantly berating ourselves. We're constantly putting on these pressures all the time. We don't even realize that. When I slow people down, they're like, oh, yeah, I had that thought, I had that feeling, which led to that behavior, right? We learn how to be compassionate towards others. Our whole lives center around being compassionate towards others. We never, ever learn how to be self-compassionate. People tell me time and time again, what does that look like? I don't even know what that is. And, I had this beautiful example the other day. I have to tell you, I literally had tears rolling down my eyes. But I had this medical student that I'm working with, and I've been working with her. It's interesting. I started out with her when she was in high school, which is unbelievable, right? Because I have a lot of kids who come in because their parents force them or whatever the case is, but they return back to me because they'll remember something I said to them or the interaction we had. And anyway, she was taking this really critical exam. And literally, this exam will make or break whether she could get a residency in a specific area of medicine that she wants. Okay. So literally, she'd have to give up her dream, which is so scary if you think about it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we're talking about like a super high functioning person, but she was so anxious. She was so anxious that she was procrastinating. She lost focus. I mean, it wreaked havoc literally where she was taking these practice tests and she wasn't being her best self. There was no question about it. And we talked about, this self-compassion that I'm talking about and, that she keeps on berating herself and she keeps having these worrying thoughts and it keeps flooding her and then it's affecting her concentration and focusing. So anyway, she said to me, I don't know how to be self-compassionate. I don't even know what that is, honestly. She said, I was always my whole life, I was on overdrive. I just function. I don't know. So we got into how did she feel compassion, whether towards her or away from her. And it was very interesting. She was explaining that her grandparents were like her number one cheerleaders. And she felt that they really provided a lot of compassion and love toward her. And that always made her feel worthy. Well, her grandparents died. And she said to me, I don't have my cheerleaders anymore. And so I said, well, maybe you could be your own cheerleader. And she's like, I don't know how to do that. And we went through exercise after exercise to teach her that. And it was so amazing. Just yesterday, she texted me and she was like, I passed. Oh, she was so thankful. And she said, thank you so much. And she said, I am so proud of myself. So I wrote back to her, a tear just rolled out of my eye in joy for you. So utterly thrilled for you. Not that I ever had a doubt. You did it. Love that you said that you're proud of yourself. Go celebrate. So she wrote back to me, I can't stop crying too. Happy tears. Genuinely feel an internal sense of confidence and pride. And I have to thank you for that. Took a while to get there, but I'm so glad I did finally believe in myself again. And it feels so incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is internalizing that. And we talked about that it's not just like a cognitive process, I am proud of myself, right? But it's feeling it at the gut level, connecting to it. And it wasn't about her passing her test. It's about the process by which the effort that you put into the task, right? Because sometimes things come up in unexpectedly, our lives are uncertain, and we have to be able to manage and cope. And if you have a true sense of self-compassion and self-love, nothing ever falters. That's the beauty. And the empowerment is really all about the ability to recognize that we're in control of our destinies, right? It's that sense self-efficacy. And that when we put effort into something, that it will result in something positive. And ultimately, it's really taking direct action in line with our values. I mean, all of work centers around our values. So that's the most critical piece to this. We really, really want to always be aware of our values, that it being formative for us, and take action on behalf of them.
That's excellent. And I relate to that because I had that same feeling when my grandparents died and then my father died. It is kind of like, where is your cheerleaders? And we're so used to getting external validation. And I know even when I work with my own clients in coaching, when we talk about self-compassion, it's a common misconception that they think of self-compassion as selfish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, well, if I start thinking about myself and how I feel, that just makes me feel like I'm being very selfish. I should be focused on others. And I then get my validation and feeling of self-worth from others in return. So I'm glad you touched on all of that. I think that that is something that a lot of people struggle with. You talked about the brain and the neural pathways, and you also mentioned trauma early on. And I'm wondering if that is also, if that plays a big part. If the trauma that you experience keeps you in place, like almost as if it's your brain trying to keep you in the same place because it's almost inadvertently trying to say this is safe because it's familiar.
Yeah. So that is huge. I have
Yeah.
to say that's huge. Yeah. So if you think about trauma, right? And by the way, trauma takes on all different kinds of forms. So
Right.
I really want to emphasize that because when we hear the word trauma, I think it's so overused today, to be
Yeah.
honest. I think about these horrible, horrific, circumstances, et cetera. And we kind of isolate ourselves from it. We're like, oh, that happened to the other, not me. I'm
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
And we all, every person on this planet experiences trauma. And I mean that. It's universal. It's a universal human phenomenon. That's what I call it. Because I could tell you, people come to me and they remember the one thing their mother said that caused them to have bad body image.
Yes.
Literally, or the one incident that happened in their social constructs that forever changed how they saw themselves relative to their social constructs. I could go on and on. It is amazing to me what people remember. And again, how our mind holds on to those memories to protect us. So that could be, like I said, one sentence our mom said to us, or it could be abuse. It really runs the gamut. Okay. And it shapes who we are, because when we're kids, right, our brains are so like they're growing and developing, and we have neuroplasticity. Our brains are always changing and developing. So it's like we're sponges. We're always getting stimulus from our natural environment to make sense of the world. And that gauges our perceptions and the way we see ourselves, the way we see others, the way we see the world. And that's constantly evolving over time. So we always have to kind of take that into consideration, these changes that are constantly happening. I want to make one comment about what you said about self-compassion and selfishness, because I think really important. It's interesting. That is also how we're socialized, is that we constantly have to, and by the way, the word selfish in and of itself is so negative, and it keeps us from setting boundaries. It keeps us from asserting our needs. And I could go on and on.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with having self-preservation. That's not selfish. So the way I define it is, it's the difference between making a decision on behalf of yourself, but taking other people into consideration, and the difference between making a choice on behalf of yourself and not taking anybody into consideration. Now, how often do we really behave that way? I personally, I don't feel like I do, and I feel most people don't.
Right.
Unless you're like a sociopath or a psychopath, right? You do think of other people. You do. That's just naturally our process. So we're not really ever selfish. It's really more about have you have that mindful attention awareness in order to make the decisions on your behalf. And again, it goes back to values. I'm going to go back to that again.
Right.
When you're clear about your values, it's usually a value conflict that comes up. And in different circumstances, you have to make a decision based on what's more formative in that moment. That's what it comes down to. So again, a lot of the skills and tools that I teach are very empowering. And we change the way we think about ourselves in the world so that we're not kind of constantly in this embedded, berated, negative space, because life is so short. Life is so short.
Yeah.
And talked about the brain. Our brain is wired to protect from danger and discomfort 24/7. And it's a reptilian brain. It takes its job really seriously, okay? We think of our brains as so sophisticated. It is not. It's sort of like a PC. So with our PCs, there's not a brain in there, right? It's whatever we put into the PC, the program, the software, that is what we get in results. That is our brain too. It's the same thing. It is very basic. It is very reptilian. Whatever information we feed into our brain is the output. That's all it is, literally. Okay. And that's why we repeat behavior.
Right.
So we're constantly, with trauma, like you talked about, when somebody is traumatized, little t or a big T, we then have memories which protect us for our future. So it will constantly make associations. It will constantly put us in a fear space. It will constantly warn us so that we don't repeat behaviors or we don't repeat circumstances because that didn't serve us well, or it made us uncomfortable, or it was dangerous, or whatever it is. So think about this, which is really fascinating to me too. You could be at an event, okay, and everything was pretty great, but one little thing happens. What is your brain going to stick to, right? So let's say you're at an event for 6 hours, and 10 minutes out of that 6 hours, you had a little bit of an uncomfortable interaction with somebody. But the other, The other amount of time, you had a great time. It was wonderful. But you will leave the party thinking about those 10 minutes and it will stick with you for 5 days.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So our brain sticks onto difficult memories and challenging memories. That's why, like I always say, when something especially wonderful is happening or you're having, like, to really take the moment to take it in, the mindful moment, and be in present moment awareness.
Mhm.
Guess what? Oh, your memory is going to forget it. That's it. It's going to forget it. Our brain doesn't hold on to happy memories. Our brain holds on to negative memories. How sad is that? Like, think
Yeah.
about that.
That's so true. That's so true. And then when you were talking about before with self-compassion and self-acceptance is really just the lack of judgment. But I think that's a lot of what happens in those negative experiences is like you go to an event and you have a negative experience and then you start to ruminate on, well, should I have done something different? Should I have said something different? And all the judgment seems to be internalized. And I'm wondering too, because when you said it's like our brain, it's based on the information that it's intaking. So if somebody were trying to cultivate self-acceptance and self-compassion in their daily lives, it seems like they would need to change the input. And is that essentially the initial steps that somebody should take?
Yeah, my whole book is about that. Because I see it really, it's an ACE method.
Hmm.
It's literally the way you walk into your life.
Hmm.
One of the things was happening when I published the book is the publishers kept on, getting frustrated. What population is this going to help with?
Yeah.
How do I apply this? Right. And they would kind of give me a hard time. And I'm like, no, this is like a method.
Hmm.
This is like, this deals with any stuckness from A to Z, literally any stuckness you could apply this to. And I teach it to young kids. I teach it to teens and young adults, and they use the lingo. They get it. They internalize the skills. So the way I constructed the book, which is important, is I start out with the neurophysiology because I feel like we have to know that. And when I teach that to people, the sense of relief I see on people's faces is amazing. When we understand our brain, we have a different relationship with it. So that's first. The second is on values. That's the first part. And the second, third, and fourth part is breaking it up in acceptance, compassion, empowerment. But I start out with each part talking about barriers. We have to know fundamentally what we're working up against. And by the way, we have so much working against us. I mean, I hate to be such a downer, right? But the reason why I'm not a downer is because it gives us self-efficacy.
Hmm.
Like, where we could feel helpless and say, oh my gosh, there's nothing I could do about this. We could say, oh, I get this. I could actually change this. I have the power within me, not within somebody else, not within something else, but within me. The power lies within me. That is transformative. Then the second part of it is I give how to integrate skills, and I give experiential exercises, and I end off each chapter with a guided meditation that kind of integrates all the information. So there's fundamental skills, and it takes practice. We want things to come easily, and we want quick fixes. There is no quick fixes. Anything you want badly enough, you have to work for. That's
Yeah.
just the way it is. And I use the example of like professional athlete. These are highly skilled athletes.
Yeah.
Now, do they go into a basketball game and say, "Oh, I don't need to practice. I'm good. I'm talented. I don't need to practice." No, these guys are on the freaking court for 5 hours a day practicing. Just because you have a skill and a talent doesn't mean that you don't have to practice. I don't care
Absolutely.
how incredibly talented you are.
Yep. Innate talent only takes you so far.
That's right. You are in the grind, you are doing the work, and any athlete will tell you that.
Yeah.
And that's true for anything you want to cultivate. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you want to be more patient with your kid. I don't care if you want to be more attuned and articulate in your reading. I don't care what it is that you're looking to accomplish. You need to put in the time and effort. That's bottom line.
Yeah. And I will say the thing I love about your book is that it explains how to create a life and legacy of love. And I love the fact that it's of love. So whether it's for yourself or whether it's for others, I think that that is extremely necessary. And honestly, personally speaking, I think that that is something that is lacking in this world. So I love that your book really encompasses a lot of that. And I'm wondering if you can share from your perspective what you hope the key takeaways that people who read your book will walk away with.
I love that question. Yeah. A lot of the writing and the work that I do is really like I want people to walk away really embodying self-love and compassion. To me, that is where it's at. That's the gift because that compels you into a space and a place whereby you're acting on behalf of that. And, when people talk about the discipline, my discipline, I said the biggest gift you could give yourself is discipline because you're fostering worthiness, you're fostering self compassion, you're fostering all the things you want to in order to compel you to do more. That's going to make you feel more self love. It's like this spiraling effect, but a positive one.
Right.
And I know literally every single time I lean into my values, I do a values evaluation every single evening before I go to bed. Yeah. And I think about, and I talk about that in the chapter, but I talk about what am I leaning into? What am I leaning out of? What is leaning into my confidence? What is leaning out of my confidence? When I make decisions, when I behave, I think about what's leaning into my confidence because I leaned into my value of thoughtfulness, because that's who I am. That is how I walk. That is how I talk. That is how I breathe. That is how I behave. And I don't want to be anything other than that. And every time that happens, I'm going to note it and feel proud of myself. So that if somebody came over to me and said, Michelle, you're not so thoughtful, I would laugh because I would say, I am taking action on behalf of my thoughtfulness. And there's no way that you could actually say that about me because I don't believe it. I actually believe otherwise. And I would say conviction.
One thing I love that you just touched on too about the decision making is I think this plays a big part in, and I want to talk to you about your TEDx because in your TEDx, you talk about emotional avoidance. And one of the things that I was thinking about in watching your TEDx was how it affects the decision making process and just in terms of like our mental health and how we think about things. I'm going to link to it in the show notes so people can watch it because I think it's such a great TED Talk. But can you explain sort of how emotional avoidance affects our decision making?
Oh gosh, it affects it in so many ways. To avoid danger and discomfort. What is uncomfortable? Negative emotion. It causes us to be uncomfortable. Sadness, disappointment, frustration, anger. I could go on and on and on, right? We have so many different levels of emotions that it's so uncomfortable, you know? And of course, it's going to affect our decision making at all times. I don't care how grounded you are in your values, which I am, but sometimes, yeah, I'm overcome with negative emotion and it causes me to shut down. It causes me to repress. It causes me to avoid. It causes me to distract. All of those things because it is so uncomfortable. And when I say uncomfortable, to different level and extent for each person. I mean, some people really suffer, like, let's say anxiety. I work with so many people. I mean, that's why I call myself the anxiety lady. But I work with so many people with like intense anxiety. And my heart goes out to people who really suffer from anxiety and depression and all different types of kind of diagnoses, or manifestation of whatever it is that we kind of go through, or anger. I mean, I know I could really go to a rageful place. Anger is so comfortable for me. Too comfortable? I like anger. I like to swim in it. It makes me feel strong. It makes me feel
You have an outlet.
yeah, it's a false sense of strength,
Yeah.
of course. It's not my authentic self. And what's underneath that is disappointment and sadness, which I always kind of get to when I'm feeling that rage. I'm like, okay, Michelle, what are you sad about right now? What's going on? And then I'm in tears, of course. Like it's so easy to slip into that for me because that's a space that I kind of occupied throughout my childhood, and I totally get it. Or repression, another big biggie. I love, oh my gosh, my brain, it protects me so well that like something will kind of come up a week later and I'm like, oh, that's what now things come up so readily because I've been obviously working a lot on myself that I literally do. I force myself. I sit in it and I'm like, what does this feel like? And I close my eyes, say, how am I experiencing this? And what does this feel like? And what does it remind me of? And who is this in my life? Right? How old am I? And I kind of go through this whole exercise. And sometimes I sit there and I'm so uncomfortable. Like literally, it feels so horrible. But then I come out of it and I'm like stronger than ever. So all the power's within us. It's literally there. I call it like we have like a piece of marble, right? There's a piece of marble and we look at the marble and it's beautiful. But then we carve it. And fundamentally, our worthiness, our wholeness is there. It's there. Sometimes we need to just form it. Sometimes we need to just sculpt it. Sometimes we need to take off that layer and our beauty and our golden light shines through. And it's just really allowing the light to shine through.
Yeah. One of the things you said that I thought was so profound was sitting in the discomfort. And especially when you're dealing with uncomfortable feelings and negative feelings, I think that's what a lot of people avoid is the sitting in the discomfort. It's like, I don't know how to sit in this discomfort. And I don't know what to do with feeling these feelings. And so I'm wondering if there are key skills or techniques that you would recommend for dealing with that uncomfortable feeling and sitting in discomfort.
Yeah, and that's actually in the TEDx talk, that's what I talk about, that we have to do it very incrementally, very slowly and incrementally. And I use metaphors to be able to accomplish that. The example that I gave in the talk was with the ball. There's imagery we could use. If you do it too quickly, you're going to resist. It's sort of like, when I tell people about exercise, how important exercise is, and then they're all gung ho, right? New Year's resolution, they go to the gym, they're working out, and guess what happens? Either they get really sore or, something happens where they just feel deflated and defeated. And guess what? Never step foot in the gym again. That's what happens. So we can't just jump head first into it because our body, our mind is going to resist. I'm telling you, that's just the way it is. It's like, no, you're not going to just run a marathon, right? You're going to train for the marathon. You're going to walk down a block. And then you're going to incrementally switch it up and intensify it until you're able to do the marathon. And it doesn't matter if it takes a year for that to happen. There's no timeline in our growth. Beauty, like we do it incrementally. So there are things that we could do. And by the way, what I described to you in terms of myself, do you know how long that's taken me? No, that hasn't just happened overnight. I promise you. What it has come down to is my willingness to see myself. The good, the bad, the ugly, see it all. And for it not to be threatening, right? And all the fears. So like with trauma, with anything, we build these defenses.
Yeah.
That is part of the issue. And we walk and talk with our defenses. And again, if you want to get therapeutic, it's called adaptations, right? There's different terminology for it. Different mechanisms, adaptations. There's all these compensatory strategies. There's all these things that we do. And I explain it in my book too. Rationalizations. And I think I listed like 30 thinking rationalizations that come to our mind. And it's so funny because people are like, oh, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, okay, let's slow down. And then they go through the list and they're like, oh my goodness.
Yep.
I can't believe how I rationalize my thinking and my doing. It's like, whoa, like we don't even realize that it happens so quickly. So we have to recognize all of this. We have to be our own science experiments and study ourselves intrinsically, get to really, really know ourselves and be open to that process. So willingness. And I ask people, how willing are you to sit in the discomfort? And they may say, I can't even think about that. And you know what I do when I'm with them and they're in my office, let's say, or online, depending if I'm doing remotely, I'll do those exercises with them. So I'll say, like, this happened yesterday. I was meeting with somebody and verbally what she was saying was, was pretty intense emotionally. But again, I couldn't see it in her body language. Interspersed into what she was saying, I saw her face like change. Her posture changed. I saw a little bit of kind of tears welling up in her eyes, but she wasn't expressing it. There was a disconnect, and I stopped her and I said to her, can we take a minute can we take just like a second here? Is that okay if we stop? I know I'm interrupting. I'm so sorry. Like, is it okay? Like, yeah. And I said, what's going on for you right now? I'm noticing a change in your posture. And when I even said that, all of a sudden I saw like a welling up of tears because I brought it to her awareness. And I said, what do you think's going on right now? Like, let's actually first focus on your body. Close your eyes, right? Let's go from the top of your head. We did like a body scan. And she was able to say, oh, you know what? I'm feeling like this heaviness and this tightness on my chest right now. And I'm like, okay, like, could you just be with that for a second? Like, and just be curious about it, right? Are you judging it? Yeah. Why am I feeling this way? Why do I have to be so sensitive? Why do I have to reaction to this? They always treat me this way. This is nothing new. Why does it get me so upset? I don't want to get upset over it. All the things we tell ourselves.
Absolutely.
I get that. Yeah, that would make sense that you'd think and feel that way. Get it. Get it. Like that's a thought you constantly have. Wouldn't you rather not feel that way? Of course. If I could take it away from you, I would. I'd just take it away, right? But we can't. So like, is it okay to sit in it just like a few minutes? Like, is that okay? And I'll kind of do it incrementally with her. And then I'll say, okay, like you had all those kind of sensations, like what thoughts are coming up for you? What thoughts related to that? And then she'll kind of say a feeling, because that's what happens. I'm like, no, that's a feeling. Like, what thought? What thought is coming up? And then I'll say, right, what are you thinking? And then we'll kind of break it down. Oh, when you have that thought, is there any changes? Like, is any changes in what you're feeling in your body? Any changes in your feelings that are coming up? Like, again, this is such a slow, gradual process that I'm explaining to you. And then what are you compelled to do about it right now? I want to run. I want to avoid it. I want to like go and just like kind of watch Netflix because that's what I always do, just to not feel it because it's so painful. I want to, whatever. Okay. Gosh, your brain wants to protect you. Love that brain of yours. It loves you so much that it wants to protect you. Like, how wonderful is that brain? Yeah, you got to really appreciate that, right? Look how it's protected your whole life and it's allowed you to function the way you did to be who you are now. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you, brain. Right? But let's get back to you want to keep going down this road. Is it serving you well? And what would show up if you didn't behave this way? What would happen? What fears are coming up? What concerns? And I could go on and on.
Yeah, I think that's very profound. And I actually had a very similar experience. And after my dad passed and I was in therapy and it's the very same thing. And my therapist, like she stopped me and she was like, it's like you're getting the emotions right up to the neck and then you're suppressing. And she's like, and why is that? And we went through this sort of the same thing. And I realized, and I didn't even, I wasn't aware that I was doing it because it was so ingrained to be natural. But then I realized that is how I was brought up, was to not show any emotions. That was supposed to be how you show strength. You don't sit in like your feelings and understand them. You just avoid, you suppress. So I found the information you just shared as well as your TED Talk just very profound and so motivational.
And I have to say, like when you just said what you said, I felt such compassion for you, both because of what you experienced with your dad, of course, which is, so hard and challenging. And then also just being able to sit with that and how painful it is, And also like, gosh, we're acculturated that way through our social constructs, through our race, religion, tradition, so many times cultural, I have to say, we don't even realize that it's part of, it's just kind of part of our
brain. Yeah. But I will say, like, it's also liberating. It was very liberating to give myself the permission to sit in it. And then honestly, I felt more strength in having sat in it than just avoiding and suppressing. So, I mean, again, I think it's absolutely profound. One thing too that you touched on was along the lines of like mindfulness and being present. And I know that is a big thing. I mean, between what you teach at NYU, but then also on your YouTube channel. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of just share how mindfulness and meditation has impacted your life personally, and then why you recommend it to others.
Sure. And again, it's very trendy, right? It's in the media, which I think sometimes people are resistant because of it. It becomes off-putting to some people. They're like, what's this trendy woo-woo thing? And how is it going to help me? Like, seriously. And only those people do it. And sometimes, by the way, it has also to do with accessibility. There is disparities in this country and in terms of access to resources. So like, it sounds great. The wonderful thing, which I try to really convey, is it doesn't have to cost anything. Anybody could practice mindfulness, literally. And I don't care who you are. There's a lot of research now, which is wonderful, on mindfulness and the effectiveness of mindfulness. And essentially what mindfulness does is it changes the structure of our brain. Now, we weren't able to see that years ago because we didn't have the technology to be able to see that. Now we do. We see it through MRIs and through advanced technology. It replaces and replenishes the gray matter in our brain, which depletes over time while we age and helps with memory and focusing and health. There's so many health benefits and otherwise. You don't have to take my word for it. There's research and proof that it changes the structure of our brain. Now, what else, what other device do you know that changes the structure of our brain? There isn't anything literally out there. We can't grow in our brain. It's just not possible. So for that reason, it is so essential and it doesn't have to be complicated. So meditative practice is a type of mindfulness. Mindfulness is vast. You could accomplish mindfulness. And again, I teach 15 weeks of mindfulness. If you could imagine how vast it is. And people don't realize that.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're in your shower and you're closing your eyes and you're feeling the water cascade down your body and being in present moment awareness. I don't care if you're walking and you're doing kind of a walking meditation and you're focusing on your feet hitting the ground. You're seeing everything around you, right? You're seeing textures and colors and nature and whatever. I don't care if you're playing with your dog and you're so hyper-focused on the moment, maybe of playfulness or joy that you're feeling as you're playing with your dog. Again, I could go on and on. There's thousands and thousands of ways to be mindful. Just like when I tell people exercise is really great for you and they say, oh, but I don't like to do anything. No, there's thousands of different types of exercises. I'm not telling you that you have to go for a jog or do kickboxing. You could be walking up a flight of stairs and I'm very happy with that.
Right.
Okay. If it doesn't work, go to B, C, D, and the rest of the alphabet. Same thing with meditative practice. People are like, oh, but first of all, there's a lot of misconceptions about what meditative practice is in general, but I have to quiet my mind. No, I can't do that. I hear that all the time. It's too hard for me, too challenging. I can't quiet my mind. I'm too anxious. My mind is too, races too much. And I'm like, you need this.
Yes.
If that's what you're telling me, you really need this.
Yes.
So like I said, you really have to find what works for you. And there's so many resources out there. If you Google, you could find thousands and thousands of resources, literally. Guided meditations aren't for everybody. I record guided meditations. That's not the type of meditative practice that I practice.
Oh, okay.
Interesting enough, right?
Because there are so many different types of, there's also types of guided meditations also. There's just so many.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm saying that is, interestingly enough, it is a type of practice that is helpful for many, many people. But I practice transcendental meditation, which is a certain type of meditation.
Love it.
Yeah. Love, love. And I'll do different types of, I'll do sometimes Shambhala meditation or a mindful awareness practice. I'll do different types of things. I don't, subscribe to one, although transcendental meditation is definitely my go-to. Like I said, find what works for you.
Yeah. I just want to thank you so much for coming on and talking. I could talk to you forever about all of these topics and even more, but I am going to link to your website and your YouTube, as well as your Psychology Today blogger page and your Instagram. But is there any last words or advice that you would like to give to anyone who's really just trying to unleash their best selves?
Yeah. So you said my subtitle in my book, and that is the magic word. When I use the word unleash, I use that very purposefully. So I want to say that we have the beauty and light within each of us. And when I ask people, are other people worthy? They're like, of course. I'm like, oh, so that doesn't apply to you? We are all worthy. We are all intrinsically wonderful and wholesome. And stuckness is a natural human phenomenon. And you can empower yourself to be and do what you want to. Yeah. So I want to say that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
You're welcome. And it was so nice talking to you. Thank you for making it so seamless.
To our Core Happiness listeners, I encourage you to check out Dr. Michelle's book, Ace Your Life, Unleash Your Best Self and Live the Life You Want, as well as her talk on TEDx. All contact information, as well as links to the book and TEDx talk, will be linked in the show notes, and we would love to hear from you. Please reach out and let us know how you enjoyed this episode, what you learned, what were your key takeaways. Until next time, keep striving, to be your best self.
I thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to rate it or leave a review. If you have any thoughts or questions, I would love to hear from you. You can email podcast@corehappiness.com. For show notes and additional resources, you can visit www.corehappiness.com. As always, please remember, never let anyone diminish your light. Until next time, sending you my love.